Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you all are doing well. So basically, before I start today's stream, I just want to let you know that this is our second stream. In the first stream, as far as IGCSE and O level for May June 26 is concerned, I ran through the overall syllabus breakup and the paper pattern as well. And this stream will focus from the first chapter. So we are starting with the first chapter for economics, and we'll continue these streams every week. So I want you to let others know and share this stream as much as possible. And this stream will also help you. So basically, you can completely rely on these streams as far as your IGCSE O level syllabus is concerned. To an extent, we'll try to cover as much as possible up till the month of December. So we'll try to cover, as like I said, we'll try to cover as much as possible. So for whatever topics that we're covering through these streams, I will make sure that we are doing its past paper question as well. So this will have a significant positive impact on your learning. And we're going to be continuing these streams regularly every week. Okay, guys, so we are starting with our first chapter. We are starting with the first chapter, and that is the basic economic problem. And in the previous stream, I also ran through the syllabus as well. So if you're watching this right now and you haven't gone through the previous stream, make sure that you go through it after this stream as well. Now, guys, before I sort of explain things and I make you understand, since this is technically our first class for economics, I also want you to sort of go through the concept of, what is the subject about? Like, why do we even, why are we even studying this subject? What is economics? Why are we even studying it? Why is it important for us? Like, what is it? What does economics do? What is the subject all about? So, econ is basically, economics is basically the study of, if you want to understand what economics is, so economics is basically the study of how societies use their resources to produce goods and services and how these resources are distributed among different people. Now, this is the basic definition of economics, and if you go deep into this definition, you try to understand that when we're saying societies are using resources, and these resources are scarce, right? And because these resources are scarce, so economists need to find the way or come up with the best possible use of these resources, right? And then when I say how they are distributed among different people, we'll come to that point as well. But econ is econ is primarily the study. It's the study of how societies use their scarce resources, right? So they're going to be how they are going to use their scarce resources to, because ultimately the scarce resources have to be used for something, right? To produce goods and services, and from the goods and services that will be produced, then they would be sold, and then money would be made, and trade and exchange would take place, and that's how societies would earn money, and that's how societies would progress and grow and prosper, and there would be more growth. And that's all what economics, that's somewhat a very basic way to explain what economics is all about, but primarily this is what economics is all about, and how these resources and how these are sort of distributed, as in the goods and services produced. When you produce goods and services, you sell them, you make money. So technically what we're saying is that how money is distributed among different people, how these are distributed among different people, right? And so economics, guys, is basically a social science. And when we say that it's a social, so see, when we talk about sciences, you guys, some of you have also must have studied sciences. So it's not the science that is done or tested in the labs. This is a science that is observed, and from around, it is a science that is observed, and then after the observations, basically we come up with conclusions that what and why are things happening the way they are. And then after that, basically we sort of derive conclusions, and we sort of make opinions, and we have to come up with certain solutions. And that's what economics is all about. It's about giving solutions to society's different problems that are associated with poverty and inflation, unemployment, and the smallest ever being what sort of goods and services are being produced, how incomes are distributed in society, how uh, as in if a lot of bad goods are being produced, and why are they being produced, if we should produce healthy goods or good goods. We call them merit goods in economics, which is the first class. So we should be producing healthy goods, and if they're not producing good quantities, then why, and what sort of solutions can economists come up with. So we study economics not so it when we say it's a science, it's not a science that is done or tested or carried out in the labs, right? It's a science that involves society and its problems, and it comes up with solutions, right? So it's a social science, actually, right? And so so this is what economics is all about. And when we're studying economics, right, we have to first understand that, see, if resources were not scarce, right, if there was unlimited resources in societies, then there would be no problems, there would be no poverty, everyone would have what they want. But that's not how things are. So resources are scarce, and when we say that resources are scarce, that leads us to the basic economic problem in economics, right, that you can also see on your screens as well. So um, um, a student says, sir, where can I get your notes? So we'll soon let you know, but for now, you see, the purpose of these live streams is not only to explain the content, it's for you to develop economic intuition and to make economics so much embedded in your head that answering past papers should be very, very easy. And that's what the goal of this live streams are. And every week you will have these live streams. So book your Saturday 6 p.m. Also, guys, share these live streams with all the O levels and IGCSE students that you know, and let them know that these live streams are happening for the May June 2026 attempt. So you can directly study from me through YouTube, right? And ask me as many questions that you want during these streams so we can have a good interaction. So share the stream link with others so that they can join as well. And so just don't focus on the notes, because you see, notes though, I mean, we'll so find a way how can you access that, but it's more about developing that primary base in economics that my job is to do right now, so that not only does you guys find economics more fun, but also the fact that you are able to solve the past papers very easily. And we will be doing these past papers in these streams as well. And so this is the first stream where we are actually beginning our course. We're starting with chapter 1. So the fact that resources are scarce in society leads us or concludes on the fact that we have a basic economic problem that exists in societies, right? And the basic economic problem is the problem that we all face. And when we say we means in economics, what do you really mean by we? When we use we in economics, who are we referring to? Who is we here? When we say that we face the basic economic problem, so who is the we that we are talking about here, right? So when we say we, right, when we are using the word we here, we're actually talking about economic agents. Economic agents means people who are actually running or responsible for the economy. That includes people like me and you, and the state and firms. So we have 3 economic agents that you're going to be studying about. They are individuals like people like me and you, who are also known as households. They're known as households in economics. Then you have these firms who are basically known as producers. Their job is to produce goods and services and sell them to you. And then you have the state, also called the government, right? That's what we are, because they are responsible for economic activity. They're basically responsible for economic activity to take place. That's what they're responsible for, right? And the whole purpose of economic activity in economics is to do trade and exchange, right? Trade and exchange means producing goods and services and then selling it for a price and then making money. And so if people like me and you are doing that, then ultimately we will grow, we'll make more money. And let's say that what we are doing, others are doing as well in our country. And so that's how, if everyone does that, whether we have a small donut business or a teaching business, or I don't know, a hospital business or whatever, we're doing something, we're doing economic activity, we're positively contributing to society, and that's how societies prosper, and that's how countries or nations prosper in terms of growth and development, and in terms of GDP, and in terms of producing outcome and incomes for people. And that's what the job of economics is, to sort of explain this process, not only explain this process, but in order to find a way to whatever problems that comes in between making progress and economic growth and development, finding solutions, reasonable solutions, sustainable solutions for that as well, right? So but the problem again is that we are facing with a basic problem that is known as the problem of scarcity in economics, right? We are facing with a problem that is known as the problem of scarcity in economics, and that is what the basic economic problem is. Yes, the glam says consumers. You are right, but like you're half right. So it's consumers are basically known as individuals or households, and when you're saying consumers, yeah, you can say they're consumers, but then consumers, yeah. So consumers and producers and the government, right? But consumers are also known as households or individuals in an economy, right? So guys, the basic economic problem of scarcity is basically that you have unlimited resources. Sorry, you have unlimited wants, and you have limited resources. So obviously, you can't buy anything, or we can't do whatever we want, right? We have a limit to amount of, and so it's not just so we are stuck with limited resources. The producers or the firms are stuck with limited resources, right? And let's say your school or college that also has limited resources. It's not that they can open unlimited amount of branches they want. And the state or the government, whether we're talking about the government of Pakistan, whether you're talking about the government of India, Bangladesh, or I don't know, whichever country we're talking about, they are also faced with limited resources. Now, when you talk about the resources for the government, we're talking about how much money they have. And states have money from the taxes that they collect, and they also have limited money. So they can't do whatever they want to do, right? They can't give unlimited amount of salaries to its employees. They can't have unlimited military equipment. They can't have unlimited amount of spending that they want to do on education sector, on healthcare, on maybe they can't develop as many they can't improve the infrastructure of an economy to an extent that they would want to be improved because of limited money, right? So we're all faced with this basic economic problem of scarcity, right? So we and like I've written in my notes that we can't have everything what we want, so we have to make choices. And remember that guys, that these choices should be rational. I mean, we need to make rational decisions. When we say choices, we're actually talking about decisions, right? And remember that these choices should be rational. Again, guys, a lot of students last time as well, they were watching these streams later on. I again request you to please share the stream link with your friends so that people can know that these live streams are happening. And please remember that the live stream time for economic streams would be Saturday 6 p.m. Every Saturday 6 p.m. we'll be having a stream. Okay, and we're going to be continuing our economics course. And so the thing is that the fact that resources are scarce, right? Resources are scarce. We know that resources are scarce. We know that there's a basic economic problem. Now, this actually results into three fundamental economic questions. And these questions are basically the questions that we need to find out answers for, that deals with resource allocation, right? That deals with resource allocation and resources in economics are basically your factors of production. So we're talking about how are factors of production allocated, or how best they're allocated. So it's not only talking about the factors of production, allocation of the factors of production, but the outcome of that. But whatever output that factors of production are producing, and whatever incomes are being generated because of that factors of production is producing, and when we end up selling it, how is that distributed? So that's what resource allocation is all about. And so we have these three fundamental questions that we need to answer. And the reason why we need to answer them is that, the same thing. Resources are scarce. So we need to figure out what is it that we want to produce. We need to figure out how to produce it. And we also need to figure out for whom to produce it. Now, I explain these because this is important, right? So when we say what to produce, what do you mean by what to produce? If I were to ask you, and I want you to be very interactive, I want every one of you to participate, interact, because I am reading I have the comments as well, so I want you guys to also type stuff and all. So what do you mean by when you say what to produce? What comes in your head? What to produce, as in what exactly are we supposed to produce, and who sort of thinks that? I mean, what to produce? Because again, our factors of production are scarce. So when we say that what do we need to produce, we need to think about what do consumers want. So when we say what to produce, this question is answered by firms and the government. Governments need to think that what is it that needs the most priority right now. Should we spend more on military equipment? Should we spend more on healthcare or education or infrastructure? Firms need to think, what does consumers want? Government thinks, what does society want? So this is a very important thing that I'm talking about. The government versus the producers, right? The government versus the producers, right? So the producers would think, what do consumers want, right? While the government would think, what does society wants, right? Whatever benefits the society the most, whatever is in the best interest. While producers would think, whatever the consumers are prioritizing, we'll end up producing that, right? So remember that the decisions, whatever decisions the government takes or the producers take, they reflect what the society's needs are. They reflect what consumers want. They reflect what society needs and wants at that time, right? And so over here, what I've written is that, there's this word that is written in a market economy. Now, as you progress with me in the course, you'll understand what a market economy is, but to sort of explain you. So a good example of a market economy is USA. That's the best example that you can give in your exam about USA. So market economy is an economy where there is minimal government intervention, right? Which means that the government says, you know what, we're not going to intervene a lot. Probably sometimes we might if needed. But you know what, do your own job. Whatever you want to make, end up making, produce goods, produce output, make GDP, let the nations grow and prosper. And that's what market economy is all about in a very basic way. And a market economy is basically guided by consumer demand and price signals. And what I mean by it is guided by consumer demand and price signals is that if a market economy thinks that whatever a market economy or firms in a market economy would think that whatever is most demanded by consumers, we should end up producing that. We should produce what consumers actually want, right? Not what we think they want or what we think is in their best interest, but forget the best interest. If consumers want something that is not in their best interest, we'll end up making it because that's how we'll end up making money. So market economy would focus more on making money and ensuring a lot of wealth, right? And when I say about the price signals, I'm not going to be explaining this right now because it's a first class, but later on in the coming chapters, it will be explained. But do remember that in a market economy, producers would produce what is most profitable and demanded by consumers. While in a planned economy is an economic system where the state decides or the government decides to allocate resources and produce goods and services. So people like me and you are not going to end up deciding what needs to be done. It's the government or the central planners who will decide what needs to be done. And when I say what needs to be done, what needs to be produced in the next 5 years, how it should be produced, how many workers should we hire, how much has to be produced in the healthcare sector, how much in the education, how much infrastructure has to be done, what goods and services will be produced in the primary sector, do we need to export or not? All these decisions the central planning or the central planners would make, that is the government would make, right? Based on perceived societal needs. Perceived societal needs means whatever it thinks best is for the society, right? So again, we're going to ignore this for now. In the coming live sessions, you will understand what this is. Then comes the fact that how to produce, right? So firms are also going to decide what to produce. The government also thinks about what has to be produced, while the producers also think about what has to be produced, right? And that is a fundamental question that economic agents needs to answer because of scarce resources. It can't end up producing everything, right? So it needs to produce and prioritize based on whatever is needed by the consumers and hence we are saying that in a market economy, firms would produce what consumers prefer the most, while in a planned economy, the state would decide, or just the state itself would decide what needs to be done and made and produced based on the society's needs, right? Then as far as these economic systems are concerned, we have a separate chapter for that, so I'll explain it later on. How to produce, basically, when we talk about how to produce, we're actually addressing that how should we end up making it, as in, should we use more labor or should we use more machinery? Should our production be more capital intensive? Should it be more labor intensive? And capital intensive means using more labor. Capital intensive means using more machinery as compared to labor, while labor intensive means using more labor as compared to machinery. Now, labor intensive does not mean that you don't use labor anymore, or you don't use capital, any amount of capital. You will be using capital, but it's more labor intensive, means the production focuses more on labor rather than machinery. And the capital intensive is when you focus more on capital, and usually industries like car manufacturing, right? Capital intensive. Labor intensive, like the primary sector, the agricultural sector, mining, fishing, labor intensive work, right? So when we say how to produce, we need to see that should we use more or should we use more technology or integrate more technology into our production process, or what? So we'll see that whatever technology is available, we'll see what factors of production are available, what resources are available, what is the cost of these factors of production, and you'll understand. I'm going to explain what these factors of production are. Right, and whatever are we going to produce, is it environmentally sustainable? How is it going to impact social welfare or not? Maybe we end up producing something that is not really, we end up using certain production methods that are not environmentally sustainable, that results into a lot of carbon emissions, right? And are harmful for the environment, and they result in climate change, and what we are witnessing right now. So firms have to make these decisions, right? And these factors have to be factored into or considered, right? So and you remember that in a market economy where the private sector sort of dominates the market setup, firms in a market economy are profit maximizers, right? They will not, consumer versus customer. You'll use the word consumer in economics, and economics doesn't use the word customers. Customer is a business term. Economics doesn't use that word. Voice is low. I don't think the voice is low. Is it low? I've never heard that before, but I don't think it's low. I think there's something on your end, but you can, others can tell me if it's low. I'll see it. Anyways, so in a market economic system, guys, what we're talking about is that in a market economic system, so while command economies are basically your planned economies, who sort of, the central planners, they prioritize and they sort of make decisions rather than firms making decisions, and but their priority would always, it would always be social welfare and equity concerns rather than producing goods that consumers want, right? Because they would want more income inequality in society. The government or the state would want, in a planned economy, more income inequality in society, more employment generation. And when we talk about employment generation, obviously employment would also be generated by the private sector firms or the market economy. But the problem with the market economy is that a market economy would give jobs to only those people who it thinks deserves a job, right? So let's say maybe a person with low levels of skills or education might not get a good job, right? So again, the market economy rewards people who are at the best of their game, who are at the top of their game, while a planned economy would sort of rewards everyone. It makes sure there's social cohesion and income inequality. So it would give jobs to everyone, right? It will make sure that everyone has a job, right? So these are the decisions that producers or firms have to take, what to produce. And when you talk about how to produce, now this is an important question. A lot of people here are mistaken when you say for whom to produce. They think that we are deciding that who are we making the goods for. Are we making for who is our target audience? This is incorrect. when we say that for whom are we making these goods, this is a major economic decision that we are taking. Are we producing goods for who is this final output for? Because this question is dealing with income distribution. That who gets the goods? Do the rich get the goods? Do those people get the goods who actually pay for it? Or is it available for everyone? Or is it available to all those who can sort of access it without even paying for it? So let's say that if the government is going to make, for example, if the government opens up a hospital or the state opens up a hospital, right? That's resource allocation. It has allocated the resources, it factors the production to open a hospital. Now that hospital is for everyone, right? It's that access is available. It's highly accessible to the rich as much as to the poor and the very poor. So, but a private sector hospital is only accessible to those people who can afford it. And the more private sector hospitals you have as compared to the public sector or state sector provided hospitals, the more would be the income inequality, because hospital is a essential desirable good, right? And desirably in terms of welfare. So you'll have less of those hospitals that people would want to access without really, because they can't afford, without really paying for it. But then you'll only have, in an economy, you'll only have those hospitals that can only be accessed after paying a good amount of money, right? So when you're talking about for whom to produce, and this question the answer to this question will help us conclude whether incomes would be distributed. How would incomes be distributed in society? How would incomes be distributed in society? So remember that the more goods and services are produced in the economy, whether those goods and services are just chocolates being made or furniture being made, or whether more hospitals or schools and you can say anything that is being made, right? Any sort of, whether it's in whatever sector we're talking about, whether the primary, secondary, or the tertiary, whatever sector whatever the outcome of the output of that sector is, if that sector is producing outcomes that are only for those people who can afford to pay for it, then incomes would be unequally distributed in society. Remember that, right? Incomes would be unequally distributed in society. Got it? And so the state has to come up with a solution. And that's what economics is all about. Got it? So for whom to produce, as in who gets those goods? And if the rich are only getting those goods, then there is significant income inequality in society. Right? So, got it? So before we sort of move on with this, I would want to sort of explain something that when we're talking about, and like I said before as well, that in market economies, that is an economy where resource allocation is primarily done by the private sector, and they decide what has to be made, what has to be produced, for whom it has to be produced, and how it has to be produced. I mean, so primarily, market economies would always end up having an income distribution that is not equal, right? There would be incomes and wealth inequality. So, and just like I've sort of given this example that luxury cars are produced for high income earners, while public transport services are targeted at the general population, right? So when we say that, when we're talking about scarcity means that we have to choose, and choosing means that we have to give up something, and that's what the basic economic problem is. Also, guys, remember that giving up something in economics is also known as a trade-off. So in economics, you all make trade-offs. The government makes trade-offs, the individuals make trade-offs, the producers make these trade-offs, and these trade-offs are made because resources are scarce. We have to make a trade-off. Like you watching the video right now on YouTube live, you've made a trade-off that probably you didn't end up watching probably Netflix or something because you had to watch the YouTube, right? So basically also, guys, so basically another thing that I need to explain to you is about the concept of factors of production. Now, a lot of times, so at least 3-4 times I've used this word, factors of production. So factors of production are simply your resources. They're your resources that end up producing goods and services, right? So that is what factors of production are. They are basically those resources that will produce the goods and services through which you will end up doing economic activity. Without these factors of production, you will not be able to do economic activity, right? And economists classify resources or factors of production into 4 categories, right? Number 1 is your land. Number 2 is your labor. Number 3 is your capital. And number 4 is your enterprise, or you can say entrepreneurship or enterprise, right? Enterprise or entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, right? Now, land is based, when you say land, you're talking about all the natural resources. Now, all the natural resources, and when we say natural resource, it means a resource that is not produced by humans. So it would include anything that is on the earth, above the earth, below the earth, that is not made by humans. So whatever oil we have on the earth, water or minerals or anything, or plants and trees and wood, all of this is naturally. So whatever exists naturally, right? Labor, again, is your resource. Again, it's a very important resource, a human resource. And when you talk about labor, it refers to the physical and the mental efforts that are being put, or that are being sort of used in conducting economic activity to make goods and services. For example, if I am doing YouTube, it's a physical and mental effort that is being carried out right now, right? So that's what labor is. Labor could be skilled or unskilled. Skilled labor mostly works in tertiary sectors jobs, like, skilled labor in economics does not mean that you have a certain skill. Skilled in the context that you have that education and you can contribute to a higher level in terms of GDP and incomes. So, skilled labor mostly works in tertiary sector jobs, while semi-skilled labor works in manufacturing sector jobs, and unskilled labor works in primary sector jobs, right? Remember, guys, now when we talk about capital, this is something that a lot of students end up, confusing themselves. Capital and equipment, capital basically in economics refers to equipment, or you can say capital refers to all the tools in a very basic way that are highly essential in producing goods and services. So for instance, I'm using an iPad right now and a laptop, and I'm conducting an economic activity. I'm teaching a class. So this iPad and the laptop is capital for me. A restaurant that is baking pizza and selling pizza, it's that oven that they're using, and the microwave and all the kitchen equipment is all of, even the spoons and the forks and even the tables and the chairs, that's all capital for them, right? And the air conditioner and everything, right? And even the cash machine. So capital in economics refers to equipment and tools and machinery that you use in order to successfully conduct your economic activity, in order to produce something and sell it and make money. So for instance, let's say a factory building. Let's say you have a factory, and that factory is manufacturing clothes. Now, the building itself, the factory building itself, that would not be classified as land. It would be classified as capital, because that building is made by man, it's made by humans, it's not a natural resource, it doesn't exist naturally. So, which also leads us to conclude that capital is basically a man-made resource. So anything that is man-made, anything that is man-made that would help you assist in conducting economic activity would be classified as capital. So any tool or any equipment, right? So, while on the other hand, the fourth factor of production is basically enterprise. And enterprise simply means, or the entrepreneur simply means, the person who sort of gathers all these factors of production to produce goods and services. Its job is to, gather land, labor, capital, mix them up, sum them up, carry out the business. And this guy, entrepreneur, enterprise refers to the business. Entrepreneur is the person who's the owner of that business, or simply the person who takes the risk of conducting a business, and he gathers all these factors of production together to conduct economic activity and to do business, right? So the entrepreneur is a risk taker. He could have ended up doing a job and earning a fixed income, but he ended up taking that risk of doing a business, and that business could end up failing, but he took that risk, right? Now we are saying that these factors of production are scarce, and they need to be used efficiently and effectively. so that the best possible outcomes could be achieved, right? Now, when you say that, okay, so you also need to understand that the rewards for factors of production. What are rewards for factors of production? Rewards for factors of production are basically when these factors of production are put to use. When these factors of production are put to use, what is the you can say, what is the income that would be earned against these factors of production, or simply the rewards for the factors of production. So the reward for land is basically your rent, right? While the reward for your labor would be what? It would be wages. While the reward for your capital is basically your interest, and the reward for enterprise or doing business is basically profit, right? So enterprise, like I said, is the willingness and ability to take the risk and make decisions of the business, while entrepreneur is a person who will do that, right? So when you're talking about the reward for factors of production, you're talking about the incomes, in what form an income is generated against it, right? So or you can say that rewards are basically the payments. Rewards for factors of production would be basically the payments that are made for using these factors of production, right? So, and the rewards basically, if that is so, then these rewards are basically factor incomes for the factors of production, right? They are factor earnings for these factors of production. Firms would end up paying wages for services of these workers, while entrepreneur would end up making a profit in uncertain times, right? So these landowners who are giving out their land to conduct business, they would receive rent. Well, the factor reward for capital is interest, right? So, basically, so what we conclude is that our factors of production are hence scarce. Now, the next thing that I want you to discuss with you guys is about the concept of economic goods and free goods. This is our next thing that we have to discuss. Right? Are you all there? Can you please mention in the comments? That would be good. If you have any questions so far, you can ask. Also share the link with your friends. Ask them to subscribe to the channel and follow it regularly so that they are updated with the videos. Right? So moving forward, guys, we would be moving on to the concept of economic goods and free goods. And as far as this concept is concerned, when you talk about, because up till now we've talked a lot of times about, goods and services. I've been using this word goods and services. But we need to understand that what do you really mean by, goods and services are basically divided into two categories in economics as far as your O-level IGCSE syllabus is concerned. And when you use the word goods and so basically we divide goods and services into what economic goods are versus what free goods are, right? So, and a lot of times you will see that you'll end up seeing that, is my screen stuck or something? If it's stuck, so for how long has it been stuck? Is it working now? And if my screen is stuck, I think you guys missed this part. Do let me know if my stream is stuck, okay? Whenever you see that my screen is stuck, you need to let me know. Got it? Okay, so we are on this part. Can you see the screen now? Okay, so we need to understand, we need to sort of understand about the concept of economic goods and free goods, and yeah, right. So guys, please do mention that. Do let me know if my screen is stuck at any point in time. Okay. So we're discussing about what economic goods and free goods are. So as far as economic goods is concerned, you need to know 3-4 things. Economic goods are basically, they are limited in supply, meaning that they are scarce, right? And when you use more of them, it means that less is available for others, right? So since less is available for others, not anyone can use them. Then we need to figure out. A way that who gets those goods and how much do we charge for them, because it's not for everyone. So remember that economic goods are not for everyone, okay? Because they're scarce. So when you say that choices have to be made on how these goods will be used, what we're trying to say is that who gets those goods, right? So that's why we're saying that people are willing to pay for them, because they have value. And the reason why they have value is that you can charge a price for it. And that is exactly why economic goods are actually paid for in economy. You charge a price against it. Got it? You charge a price against economic goods and you sell them. So, and the reason why is because they have value. They're scarce and it takes effort to produce them. And when you say it takes effort to produce them, what we mean is that it involves factors of production. So it involves factors of production to produce economic goods. Are we clear? It involves labor, land, time, money, capital. Right? So, and for example, examples of economic goods are bread, clothes, cars, smartphones, whatever. Right? So when you talk, water in a city in the sense we're talking about the bottled water. We're talking about the bottled water, not the water that is available in the sea, because the water that is available in the sea is free goods, right? So water in the city, which has to be treated and transported as in packed up. These water supply companies who manufacture these bottles, mineral water bottles, and they supply it. That's what we're talking about, right? Well, on the other hand, free goods, these goods are not scarce, right? They're not scarce. They're freely available in abundant quantities and they are not scarce. And so if we consume them, if I consume them and you consume them, if people like us consume them, the amount that is available for others will never go down, right? Also remember that when we say that they are free, and when you're saying that they are free, they don't have an opportunity cost. Because when they are free, if let's say sunlight is free for everyone. If I consume sunlight, then I don't have to forgo something. It's not that I was going on with my friends to buy donuts and I ended up consuming sunlight. Now I don't have any money to buy donuts. It's not like that. So there's no opportunity cost involved in consuming free goods. If I go and consume sunlight, just like I am consuming sunlight, you can consume sunlight, we can see the day, and that is consuming sunlight. That's what it means, right? Or we can just go and have a bath in the lake. It's available, right? So it's a free good. So there's no opportunity cost involved in terms of paying money and not being able to do something else or having to forgo or make a trade-off, right? So it's not like that. So it's not that we're actually giving up something else. So there's no opportunity cost. So a lot of times students don't understand what do we mean by they don't have an opportunity cost. This is what it actually means. Also remember that producing them does not involve a cost. Because no factors of production are used to produce them. Like air, you consume the air that you breathe. No one produces it. It's available, and it's available in abundance till the end of humanity, right? So what we're saying is that it doesn't involve a cost to produce it, and because it does not involve a cost, we can't really sell them either. But in terms of economic goods, we can produce them, it involves a cost, and we can sell them for those who are willing to pay for them, right? Another thing, guys, you need to understand is the definition of economic activity. So economic activity involves producing something, distributing, selling, consuming. So that's what economic activity is. So firms produce, consumers consume, consumers pay money to firms, firms expand themselves, they hire more factors of production, and that's how firms are producing output and consumers are buying that output. They're paying to the factors of production, they're paying to the firms are then giving factor rewards to all these people, and for working for them and for working with them and for working and putting in their efforts, and that generates income for them. And these factors of production are such as labor are labor in the morning, but they're consumers in the evening, so they also end up consuming things. So that's how the whole model of an economic activity or an economy is working, where firms are producing, consumers are buying, and that's how GDP is made, right? So, and just like I've written, that at its core, economic activity transforms the resources like land, labor, capital into goods and services that people demand. And that's why consumers would end up paying for them, and then firms would make money and consumers would consume goods. Okay? So, so, so consumers would consume goods, like I said. Now, do remember that these economic agents that I was talking about, I talked about who? I was talking about, consumers, or you can say simply households. So these consumers, the objective of these consumers is to maximize utility. Utility in economics refers to satisfaction. So the objective of a consumer is to maximize satisfaction. So what is your objective? What is the objective right now from watching this YouTube video? Could anyone would want to mention in the comments that what is the objective that you have right now from watching the YouTube video? Right? What are you trying to do right now? Right? Anyone would want to mention again, guys? I'm reminding that these live sessions would continue, and this is a good thing that in grade 11 usually, when you're studying grade 11 topics, we are starting the course from the very beginning. So your grade 10 topics are also going to be revised like this, and by the time you reach your mids, a lot of the chapters from 10 would be revised, right? So that's a good thing that we're starting from the beginning. And I want more and more people to attend these YouTube live streams. So make sure that you share it with your friends so that more people could revise from our stream and get help from our streams. The glam says learn. So yeah, that's the objective, is to learn. And when you learn, you'll actually feel satisfied. So you're gaining utility out of the YouTube session, right? That's correct. So your objective is to basically get the most satisfaction out of this session. That's why you're writing the stuff, you're listening carefully, you're not allowing your siblings to disturb you. And the reason is the moment they start disturbing your a little sibling starts bothering, you're not going to get the satisfaction or the utility that you could have gotten, right? Producers, on the other hand, so consumers aim for utility maximization, producers aim for profit maximization. Producers want to make a lot of profit, they want to make money, right? So for example, a donut business would want to make lots and lots of money. That's why producers or entrepreneurs take the risk of doing a business and not just do a job. While on the other hand, the government or the state, right? So one could argue that the producers have sort of a selfish motive in terms of making money and minting money, but there's nothing wrong in making money. There's no harm. Only if that money making business is at the expense of harmful environmental activity or it's somehow harming welfare, then you could argue. But this is again a good past paper question. It comes in 8 markers as well, about the pros and cons of profit motive as an objective, which we will study in economic systems basically. But on the other hand, state or the government is primarily concerned with welfare maximization, or you can say they want to maximize society's welfare. They are more concerned about the society as a whole, and this objective of welfare maximization is linked with desirability. Desirability in the sense that something could be. Do remember, guys, something could be highly efficient, but not necessarily equitable. So when you're talking about efficiency, you're actually saying that something is very efficient. But just because it is efficient doesn't mean that it is equitable. It means it doesn't mean that everyone is going to get the benefit. So maybe the poor people will not get the benefit out of it because they can't afford it. So desirability is more linked with the fact that it's more equitable, and it's more, in terms of society, it thinks on a much larger level, where everyone could get the benefit out of this, and it would sort of help everyone out there, right? That's what it is. And these economic agents are responsible for conducting economic activity. They're responsible for running the economy, basically, right? Also, guys, now coming back to what sort of economic activity you're talking about, the primary sector, this is simple stuff. It involves the extraction of natural resources like fishing, farming, mining, agriculture. And so one could have a business in the primary sector. One could have a farming business, a fishing business, a mining business, or an agricultural business. So secondary, so that's how it is, right? While secondary sector involves the processing of raw materials into finished goods, it's concerned with manufacturing, right? Textile production, car manufacturing. And tertiary sector involves providing services like banking, education, retail, law firms, right? Um, Retail means, like, for example, the supermart, right? Selling to the customers, you sort of go to an Apple store and you go to, let's say, the Apple store in Dubai Mall, right? You go there and you just get it's retail, so that is a tertiary sector, right? So, like, I was again using a lot of this word trade and exchange, which has to be, so trade and exchange is basically your economic activity, right? So when you talk about trade and exchange, you're talking about all those mechanisms through which goods and services are produced and they are transferred to the consumer or between consumers themselves, or usually in return of money or for other goods. But just not, let's ignore this part and just think that trade and exchange are the mechanisms through which goods and services are produced and they are transferred from producers to consumers, meaning that producers consume them, consumers buy them, they enjoy it, and that's how economic activity takes place. And trade could happen domestically, that is within the country. For example, like I said, a farmer in Punjab sells mangoes to a supermarket in Karachi, that's domestic trade. While international trade happens across borders, you import and export, right? That is what, and you earn. So if Pakistan sells its textiles to the USA, it earns dollars against that, right? So that is what it is. That is what you can actually leave this part for now. You will understand this when we're going to be studying international trade. That is macro. Anyways, so that's what trade is, and obviously against trade, or you can say exchange, you sort of now barter system used to exist. That is why I had written here, between consumers themselves in return for money or other goods and services. Other goods and services, but other goods and services means that you sell me a pencil, I'll give you my laptop or something like that. But this system doesn't work anymore, the barter system. But monetary exchange, or let's say digital exchange, works, and this is where money is used as a medium of exchange to do that exchange, or to make sure that economic activity is conducted via an exchange system that is in place, right? Why does economic activity, trade or exchange, really matters? Because it is the lifeblood of an economy. It's the primary reason through which GDP is generated, right? So the more, or simply you can say, the more exchange or economic activity takes place, the more would be the economic growth in the nation. The more would resources be allocated to the primary, tertiary, secondary sector. The more businesses you will have, the more you will find people working. Less people would be unemployed, right? People would be specialized in different areas. Probably we'll see a lot of specialization. We'll see people specialize as doctors and surgeons, while some are specialized as lawyers and teachers, because they have these job opportunities available in the country. There would be more consumer choice, as in, there's, we have, let's say, we have a different variety of goods. We have imported goods as well, domestic goods as well. So we could choose a lot from availability of different goods. We could buy clothes from, Pakistani manufacturers, or from manufacturers abroad. So there's more consumer choice because of more competition, basically. And so when there's more economic activity, there are a lot of firms that are competing amongst each other and trying to produce the best possible outcome. So there's more consumer choice available, and that results in a higher standard. So do remember that whenever you have more consumer choice, you will always have higher standard of living, and that generates incomes for the economy. It generates more employment for the economy, more tax revenues for the government. So basically you need to understand that right now we are developing the fundamentals, and we're sort of developing the overall structure of an economy. That's what we're studying right now. The overall how an economy, whether it's a microeconomics or macro, how is the flow of trade taking place, or how is the economy being run, or how are markets being run. That is what we're actually studying right now, right? Now, guys, we've understood what factors of production are. We've understood what resources are. We've understood primary, secondary, tertiary sector. Now, and we've also understood that since resources are scarce, we can't do everything. So we studied that because resources are scarce, right? we study that because resources are scarce, we need to make a choice. And that choice leads to a trade-off, that we need to make a trade-off. Trade-off means either do this or do that. Either take this subject or take that subject, right? Or watch my YouTube live stream, or maybe just binge your show. So trade-off involves, when you say trade-off, when economists, because economists, when they were developing the theories, and they were, like I said, economics is a social science that is observed, not observed and tested in labs, that you don't mix two chemicals and see the chemical reaction, but we observe it out there, right? We observe economics out there in the wider economy and the markets, and we try to come up with conclusions. So what we're saying is that trade-off is a very good important term that you must be knowing as O-level students, that we make certain trade-offs. We make these trade-offs because the reason why we're making these trade-offs is that these trade-offs, because resources are scarce, we can't do everything, right? And remember that when we make these trade-offs, that results into, the outcome is that would result into an opportunity cost. And in simple words, you gain something, but then in order to gain something, you have to forego something. So whatever you end up foregoing, not whatever, but the next best thing that you end up foregoing is the opportunity cost. And as far as opportunity cost is concerned, right, you must understand the fact that the word itself, opportunity cost, the cost of missing out, is basically the cost of missing out the next best opportunity. Simple terms, right? And the simple reason is that I would begin by just asking a very simple question from you guys, that have you ever skipped going out with friends to prepare for an exam? And because that choice had a cost, not in terms of money, but in terms of the fun and the memories that you ended up missing. And that is exactly what economists call as opportunity. So it's not necessarily that the opportunity cost is always some financial loss or something, right? Even the fun and the memories you ended up missing because you had to prepare for an exam is an opportunity cost, right? So opportunity cost is basically the value of the next best alternative foregone. When you say the value of the next best alternative foregone, you're talking about the benefit that you forego. What benefits are you foregoing? So what is the benefit that you had foregone because you didn't go out with your friends and you had to prepare for an exam? So the benefit was not in terms of money, but in terms of fun and memory. So the value or the benefits that you end up foregoing is what we call opportunity cost. So don't just state in the exam that opportunity cost is the next best alternative foregone. Instead, say that opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative foregone, or you can say the benefit of the next best alternative foregone, right? So, and that happens when a choice is made or a trade-off is made. I told you guys that resources like money, time, and labor are scarce. So every sort of decision faces, and every sort of decision means it forces us to give up something else, right? And you need to understand that opportunity cost isn't just about money. It's about what benefit we end up sacrificing by not choosing the alternative. So whatever we choose, that one option, right? So we need to ask ourselves, what am I giving up? The sacrifice that we do is the true cost of making a decision. So that is basically what the opportunity cost is, right? So for individual people like me and you, for example, and this a lot of times this sort of, it comes also in the MCQ. A student is pursuing a degree. What is the opportunity cost? So a student who chooses a 4-year degree instead of working right away. So you graduate from college and then you sort of say that I am not going to work. I'm just going to go and choose a 4-year degree. So here, the opportunity cost of just doing the degree is the wages that you end up foregoing from the job for 4 years and the work experience you end up foregoing, right? So the work experience that you end up foregoing, the wages that you could have earned, you end up foregoing. That is all opportunity cost, right? Do remember that from an exam perspective, the opportunity cost of working is basically leisure, and the opportunity cost of leisure is working. So you can say in the exam that, for example, leisure versus work is a very traditional example that you could give. right? So if let's say you take an off from work today because you have to spend time at the beach with your family, so that means lost wages for that day. So that is an opportunity cost for spending time with family. Or if you're binging or watching Netflix instead of studying for exams, your opportunity cost might be, if you're watching Netflix a night before the exam instead of studying for the exam and you haven't studied before, so your opportunity cost might be the grade that you could have scored had you studied. So that is the opportunity cost of, so opportunity cost is what value you're sacrificing. So there are you sacrifice, you screwed your grade, so that's the sacrifice you made by watching or binging Netflix. So do remember, so you could have done a lot of things. Do remember that when we say that opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative foregone, the reason why we are saying next best is that the next best. So there are a lot of alternatives, but opportunity cost would not mean sacrificing all alternatives. It means the next best alternative, and the next best alternative means had we not done A. So there are so many options, A, B, C, D. Let's say we are doing A. So, but if I choose A, then I would ask myself, if I had not chosen A, then what would I have chosen? So if instead of A, I would have chosen B, then B is the opportunity cost, because this is the next best. So next best means that if I have not done what I would have done, it means that if I would not do what I'm doing or choosing right now, or the decision that I'm taking, then what, instead of that, what would I have been doing? So instead of choosing A, if I would have chosen B, then the opportunity cost of choosing A, it could be anything, is C, right? So that is why we say the opportunity cost is the next best alternative foregone, right? Similarly, producers also face opportunity costs. So there's a business context attached to it. A firm. So for example, a firm, let's say a firm has limited money. So it decides that it's better to probably buy a machinery right now rather than spending a lot of money on marketing. So if you are not spending money on marketing and you're buying machines right now, or you're expanding your factory, so you would lose out the potential sales from that you could have made from immediately starting your marketing, right? So, or instead, let's say that you have a land and the farmer could, on that land, he could grow, I don't know, maybe wheat, or instead he could grow corn, and he chooses to grow wheat. If he chooses to grow wheat, then the profit or the revenues of the profit that he would have made from choosing corn is the opportunity cost, right? Even companies like Apple or Google, they must constantly choose. Companies like Apple and Google would be thinking that, do they need to spend more on research and development of new iPhones, or or should they be spending that money on advertising campaigns, or instead of advertising campaigns, should they be spending more money on research and development of new iPhones, right? Again, like I said, the third economic agent, the government, right? So they are also sort of concerned about, they also have an opportunity cost. For instance, should we spend on infrastructure, or should we spend more on welfare? Let's say, should we spend more on building highways or bridges, or should we spend more on healthcare instead? Or the government might think, should we spend on defense programs? Should we, from let's say $1 million, should we spend on buying guns and weapons and warships, or should we spend that money on education? Probably open 100 more schools from $1 million, right? So if they end up spending more on defense and military, it means less of education spending. What are the benefits that you will end up getting from spending on education? It would be labor productivity would be high, your labor would be more skilled, your children would be more skilled, more productive, the children will ultimately turn more productive, and more education means more added benefits in terms of efficiency and productivity, and you're foregoing all of that, which is not good, right? That's what again, yeah, this is a good example that even in terms of, you need to make, sometimes state also needs to make decisions, and you can say it's not necessarily the state only, the big firms as well. For example, oil extraction companies could probably need to decide, should we extract more oil and export to the countries who buy from us, or would that mean less oil remaining for the future? And plus, oil extraction involves a lot of environmental damage as well. So should we be focusing on environmental damage that we might cause because of that oil extraction? So the opportunity cost of oil extraction is also environmental damage. Remember that. Opportunity cost doesn't necessarily means choosing one thing for going, as in I buy a car but I don't travel. So the opportunity cost is I don't travel, so I buy a car. So traveling is the opportunity. Don't think on those lines. So because we are building a framework right now, so since we're extracting lots and lots of oil, because probably we need to export more, and see, private sector firms or firms that want to make money, and even countries that are market economies because they want to maximize incomes and wealth, they don't give a damn about environmental so they don't really care about environment, right? So probably they're not and whatever these developed countries do, countries like third world countries need to face the climate change cost, right, that we are witnessing in terms of flash floods. Let's not go into that detail, but what I'm saying is, if you have to decide should we extract more oil now, it means less for the future, plus it also means a lot of environmental damage. So these are all, so the opportunity cost of extracting a lot of oil right now, whether it is on a state level or whether the state calls a multinational company or a Chinese firm to extract oil from Pakistan, it would be, the opportunity cost would be less oil for the future and a lot of environmental damage. That's what I'm trying to say. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So let's say that Pakistan says, you know what, should we use more of so the prime minister is thinking, or the prime minister of Pakistan is sitting with the head of the Housing and Development Authority, and they're having this discussion that, you know what, should Pakistan focus on more land for housing projects, or should we protect our forests for long-term environmental sustainability? So these are decisions that states make, and that also involves an opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost could be the environmental destruction as well, right? So that is why we say that make rational decisions, make decisions that are wise, and because resources are scarce, you can't end up wasting your resources and ending up screwed up. So you need to be rational, and do remember that, our decisions always involve an opportunity cost, and we should ensure that the opportunity cost is as low as possible. Means the sacrifice that we are making is as low as possible. And that sacrifice that we're making is actually worth the gain from the alternative that we are choosing. Only then we can say that we're making rational decisions in economics. And making rational decisions or taking rational decisions is so crucial for the growth and prosperity of nations, because resources are scarce. And that is exactly why it always boils down to the basic economic problem. If I even just go on a very basic level, like individuals, these poor guys, individuals, someone was naming them consumers, but yes, consumers, but you don't always call them consumers. I mean, we call them individuals. So individuals are people like me, because we are not consuming all the time. We're not eating or we are not consuming all the time, right? So individuals would make a decision whether do we have to, they would make a decision whether do we have to work. Should we work overtime, or should I spend a few more hours at work, or should I spend time with family, right? A business like Apple would think that, should I launch a new product, or instead of launching a new iPhone, should I upgrade an existing iPhone, right? Sorry. Or should I upgrade an existing iPhone? So what we learn is, and even the government might sort of think, so the government might think that, the government might be willing, the government might say that, should we allocate, like I said, allocate budgets between competing uses like roads versus schools. Should we spend more on schools, or should we spend more on building roads? should we spend more on building roads, or should we spend more on building schools, or should we spend more on building roads, or should we spend more on defense, or should we buy more military equipment? So that's, I mean, the government is also making decisions, right? The government is also making various decisions, right, guys? So everything involves an opportunity cost, right? Everything involves an opportunity cost, and what we are saying is that we must make sure that the opportunity cost is as low as possible, so that we end up making rational decisions, and we also make the best use of our resources. And guys, remember that when consumers would make the best use of their resources, now I want you to listen to this. If you go back, what was the objective of consumers? The objective of consumers was that they want to maximize satisfaction. So consumers want to maximize satisfaction, and they want to maximize utility. So that can only be done if you make the best use of your resources. You make rational decisions. Producers want to maximize profit. It could only be done if they end up making rational decisions. Was it the right time to launch a product, or should we have had upgraded existing ones? We ended up wasting so much money in launching a new product. We could have upgraded the existing ones. So they need to think. Again, it boils down to the basic economic problem of scarcity. I mean, they don't have enough money. Governments don't have enough money, right? So they also need to make rational decisions that are in the best interest of society's welfare or society, right, guys? So that's all for this lesson. We are done with the basic primary things, and so that's all for this session. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, you could ask me. And again, I'll repeat that please do share this session with your friends so that they can watch it later. And we're going to be continuing these sessions, inshallah. Next live would be next Saturday, and whatever chapter we would be covering, you guys can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram link is Adil Usman Zubair. You can follow me there. And the thing is that I'll be posting on my Instagram what next we would be covering. So I hope you enjoyed this. And most probably next we would be starting off with production possibility curve. Okay, so PPC, most probably, yeah, PPC, we'll be starting off with PPC. Yeah, okay, so see you guys. Thank you for joining, and Allah Hafiz.